Hello, everyone. It is October 3rd, 2018, and I thank you all for joining in on Unfound Live. I hope everybody is doing well out there, especially those people who maybe can't tune into the live show but end up watching it later on Facebook or on YouTube. I appreciate you taking time out of your day and week to come in and join the conversation. Pamela and Michelle and Tara, straight out of Leechburg. Cheryl, how are you doing? Tracy, Susie, what's going on? Hello to you too, Susie. Maureen, everybody's getting in here nice and early. I appreciate all of you waiting for the show to go live. Thank you for getting in here nice and early. Got a good show for you tonight. We're going to just do the same things we always do. I'm going to give you a little intro. I got some things to talk about. Then we're going to do a little business. I'm going to take some questions, some great questions tonight. And then we're going to talk a little recent true crime news. And then, of course, as always, we end the show talking about this Friday's case, in which is the disappearance of Alissa Turney from Phoenix, Arizona in 2001. Hello, Laura and Heather and Susan, Sherry, Melissa, is that right? Melissa, that you're new. I would remember that name. That's a unique name you got there, Melissa. So I'm going to guess that maybe you haven't tuned into the live show before. Is my memory that good? If so, welcome for the first time. And Diane and Lynn, great to see everybody tonight. Deeply appreciate you taking time out of your busy week to tune into the live show. You should know that this time next week, I am probably going to be in Orlando. My sister and her husband are coming down, and her son Charlie and his two sons are flying in from the Midwest to Orlando, and they're all going to be hitting Disney and I think Universal. So I'm going to be driving over there, I think, next Wednesday morning. So I think when I do the show next week, I'm going to be in Orlando seeing my sister, and I think I will have a room in her condo, a private, where I'll be able to do this without disturbing anybody. Cherie, what's going on? Joyce Rivatuzo, what's going on, Joyce? It's Melissa, just spelled funny. Okay. All right, Melissa, your name is just Melissa. Okay, it's spelled funny. Okay. If you can say it, I can say it. Diane, Carla, and Kelly, good to see you tonight, Kelly. Thanks for tuning in. So next week, I'm going to go over there, like I said, I think Wednesday morning. I'm going to try to get the episode for next week wrapped up before then, recording and everything. And then all I'll have to do is release it. So I'm going to be there from probably Wednesday through Saturday morning. And then next weekend, so not 3 days from now, but 10 days from now, I have a disc golf tournament up in Floral City. And actually that Saturday night, I'm going to be staying up there at an Airbnb. So I'm hoping to play well. But first, it'll be me over in Orlando seeing my nephew and his two sons and hanging out, and probably going to Disney at least one day, and I hope to get some disc golf playing done while I'm over there as well. Lana, what's going on? Becky. Christy says she's working out and listening to the show at the Margaritaville Hotel in Vicksburg, Mississippi. I'm going to take for granted that's a Jimmy Buffett property with the Margaritaville. Is that right? Is that right? I'm not a huge Jimmy Buffett fan. I just happen to know that. Not a big fan of his music and things, but I know Margaritaville when I hear it. So next week, Orlando. So it's going to be a little bit of a unique week next week. So I don't think you'll see this background next week. I don't think. Still working out the details, as you can tell. Christy says, yes, it is a property. I think I knew that. By the way, so moving on to something else. So next week's going to be Orlando, and I'll probably be releasing next Friday's episode from Orlando. Pretty sure. The next thing is, I tell you what, there have been a couple people, Andrea and Charmin, who've really been sucking up to the host this week. Writing out, at least in the group, everything that they like about Unfound and how this podcast is different from so many others, and all of you chiming in. A lot of sucking up to the host this week, and I really, really like it. I really, really enjoy it. You know that I think that I try to stay humble with all of this, so I could not be more humbled by, somebody writing something, somebody taking the time to like number the reasons that they like the program, and then all these other people agreeing, then adding in their own reasons. That is just overwhelming to me. And I joke about it, about some people really trying to get on my good side and everything. I want you to know, at my core, I could not be more humbled by that. Okay, I want you to know that. All joking and kidding around and aside, I thank those people that wrote all those nice things, and I can tell you for sure it does not go to my head. Okay, I want you to know that. And so I deeply appreciate the kind words and everybody that, piggybacked on top of it. I just, could not make me feel any better. Really couldn't. And I thank you for that. Carla's saying, unfortunately, Carla, and I don't have any updates. I don't have any updates on Tom's Brown appearance. Carla, you have to understand something. Obviously, the Thomas Brown case was a big one for Unfound. A lot of things that went on in that episode that have not gone on in most of the other episodes I've done, just unique circumstances. But still, the number one person to talk to when it comes to updates on Tom's case is his mother, Penny. And sometimes somebody's contacted me, I always tell them, you know what, she would know, and, she is the one that gets to determine what is said and what is not said in public. So and Carly, also have to realize that if I had any updates, and I would not wait until Wednesday night to air them if I was allowed to air them. If I am allowed to say something, I'm not going to wait till Wednesday night. If it's important, I'm just going to type it in there. I don't care if it's Saturday at 3 a.m. If there's an update that I hear about, it's going to go direct, and I'm allowed to say something. It's going to go directly on to, at least into the group discussion on here on Facebook. So if you don't see anything like that, then I probably haven't gotten any updates. Frankly, things have been very quiet in there, and you also have to remember, Carla, that the way things go on is that I do a different case every week. So I'm in touch with Penny. I think I talk to her maybe once a week, back and forth, but I've done like 12 cases since then, and it's hard for me to keep up to date. All right, as it is with any case that I do. I want people to keep me updated, but generally when it comes to updates on cases that Unfound is covered, the best people to go to are the guests who've been on the program. I'm going to continue to say that. Lou says, hey, Ed, I'm on vacation in Utah. Could not miss your live show. Lou, thank you very much. No, I know the state of Utah very well. Very well. Ramona says, I would love to do transcription for you. You just heard about it. Ramona, you can call, if you'll message me or email me, maybe we can talk about it. At unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, we can surely talk about it. And thank you. I deeply appreciate that. Kendra, what's going on? Jennifer. Ramona once again says, listen to the podcast all the time at home. Every time I travel in my car. Thank you. Jasmine Brown, what's going on? Kristen, thanks for joining in tonight. Carrie, Angela, thanks for everybody. Ramona, yes, all the Unfound books. There are 4 books on Amazon. The first 4 volumes, which are about the first 24 cases, I'd say, 25 cases. are on Amazon in both paperback and ebook Kindle form. Yes, Ramona. Yes. The print editions are $11. The ebooks are $2.99. However, if you'd want a printed edition with my signature in it, once again, you could contact me personally and we can make that happen. It's the same price. It's the same price as you would get off of Amazon, but it'd have my signature inside. But I keep books here if people would like a special message inside a printed edition. So if you'd like that, here I am doing business. Please contact me. Once again, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me in the group. Ramona, Holly, Shelly, what's going on? Shelly, I'm doing great. Just hanging out here in Madeira Beach tonight. It was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day. Shelly says, I've missed the last 2 Wednesday nights, getting home late now. Well, you're here now, Shelly. That's what's important. Katrina says, have any of your Unfound been found? The only case that is what I would say like 50% solved are the disappearances of Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman, Katrina. That's about a year ago that I did that episode, and I'm going to say back in April, maybe. The police finally figured out. In fact, I posted to a long article that was done in Oklahoma about that disappearance. You might want to go to the group and see that long article that was in a paper out there about that disappearance. So there you go. Let's move on to some other things. So thank you all for sucking up to the host on with your posts, but I'm joking around because I deeply, deeply appreciate it. I want you to know that I never take any of that stuff for granted. I never do. Thank you for all the Andrea and Charmin who put those posts up, and then everybody that jumped in to agree. Thank you. Unfound has a new business manager. Don't want to go too into. She's going to remain nameless for now. But you know that I did have one the first part of this year. I'm not going to say that things didn't work out. I wouldn't put it that way. But it was my friend Shay. And frankly, she's just a very busy woman. She has a lot of her own things going on. You know, she is very busy. And so, you know, at some point she just admitted, you know what, Ed, I don't know if I can give this the time that is needed. All right. And I thank her for being very honest with me about that. So we had to move on. She and I are still very close. Shay's I've known her for 18 years. No hard feelings at all. What I'm asking somebody to do is very difficult. But I think I found somebody else, and we're going to see how it works out. She and I had a good conversation a couple days ago, and I'm hoping for a lot of good things to happen. It goes back to what a lot of the ideas that we've talked about on this program before, on this live show, is like Sirius XM, getting in with other media companies like the Tribune Review, of course, that I've been working with in the Pittsburgh area. And we also talked about maybe doing some, speaking at like colleges, things like that. Clubs at colleges and things. So that's what this person's going to be working on with just a bit of guidance from me. Pretty much, I'm not saying she's on her own, but I've just kind of given her my vision. We talked about it a lot, and I think she's very passionate, very motivated, and I'm very excited to see where that's going to go. So, frankly, for the last 3 months, nothing's been going on except me doing what I can when I can, which isn't a lot. So I'm glad to have another partner in this that's going to be able to work on it in her spare time. And, of course, like I said, I'm hoping some good things happen. I know that she's very passionate about Unfound. She's very passionate about true crime. She's very passionate about missing persons. And she realizes that there's a lot of great things that can be done out there that aren't getting done right now. And maybe it's myself and the program and all of you who listen to the program that can make that happen. So, new business manager. So I'm all excited about that. Now let's get into something. Hello, Anne. Hello, Diane. And hello, Nicole. And hello, Dan. What's going on? I want to talk about something that popped up in the group this week, and that was the audio for the Kimberly Norwood episode. There was some, I guess some people found I guess at least Janice's side of the conversation a little hard to understand. Okay. I had a long post in the group, but I will also do it here so you can hear me say it. And then if anybody wants to chime in, they can. You just need to take one thing for granted anytime you hear an episode of Unfound. What you are hearing is the best that I could do for any episode. You should never think that when you hear an episode, and if it doesn't sound 100% pristine, that I necessarily did something wrong. All right, because before the episode is aired, I listen to the episode multiple times. Not just sitting here, but I'll be doing other things, but it'll be on the background, and I'll be listening to how it sounds and everything else. Okay, so if you ever hear something, an audio specifically in the interview part that doesn't sound 100% perfect, then you're just going to have to realize I did the best with what I was given. Now, particularly in Janice's case, there are things that I think affected that. First of all, as she admitted in the episode, she lives out in the boonies. All right, and we know that there are still several areas, lots of area in the United States, as much as we are industrialized, that cell phone service isn't quite as good as what you get, for example, when I live here, where I live in Tampa. My T-Mobile service in Tampa is spectacular. That's not the way it is everywhere, first of all. Second of all, the audio quality of any program or any interview is going to be based on the phone that the person is using as well. And, what I learned very quickly is not everybody is like me who gets the brand new phone every time it comes out. I mean, I have this phone right here. It's an LG V30. It's their latest one. I got it about 6-7 months ago. Before that, I had the V20. Before that, I had the V10. And each one the time I got those were new. So there's that. I think also, and I don't think Janice would mind me saying this, is that, she has a little bit of that Southern accent going on that sometimes for some people is hard to understand. I'm going to be honest with you. When I interviewed her, I understood every word. I understood every word that she was said. I'll admit that the quality of the connection was not 100%. Nothing I can do about that. But I know that if I can hear it in my ear, I usually use my right ear, and I can understand what the person is saying, then if I can hear it through my phone, then I just have to take for granted that people are playing it like through their speakers, which the speakers are better than the speaker on my phone. Their speakers in their car, speakers all over the place are going to be better than this little thing that I have in my phone. So I just want you to realize that I do the best with what I'm given. Sometimes the connection is not going to be as good as I like, but as I typed out in the group when I posted that, if it's a difference between getting 100% audio or 50% audio, how do I want to put this? Let's put it this way. Having a 100% good connection is never going to stop me from interviewing somebody. Okay? Unless I can't understand what they are saying. Okay? If I were to say that I can only interview people with this certain amount of quality when it comes to their connection and everything, I'm not doing them any favors. Okay? Yes, there is a point where maybe the call is so degraded that if I can't understand it, then of course I can't conduct the interview. If I can understand what they're saying, then I'm going to do the interview, and it's going to happen right then. Okay, that's just the way it is. I realize that maybe last week's audio is not as good as some other interviews that I've done as far as quality. The quality of the interview, the content was spectacular. The audio quality, not as good as some others. But I'm going to say something else here, and I've said this before, and some people, I think, within the last 5 days have found this to be true. If you are having problems listening to an episode on the app that you use, whether it's Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, whatever, the best quality you are ever going to get is listening off of Podomatic, and that is a free app that you could download to either your Android phone or your Mac phone, Apple phone, immediately. And some people have found that out. So I'm just going to keep saying that if you ever have issues with audio for whatever reason, the reason this is this, and I'm going to say this again. I know we've talked about this before. Practically every podcasting company out there, app company, once again, Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, all of these, they degrade the audio before they stream it. They do that because it's cheaper for them. Because it doesn't take up as much bandwidth. Okay? My episodes are saved at 109. I know I'm getting into technicalities here. 192 kilobytes per second. That is a very, very high quality. The size of the files that Unfound creates, that 2-hour show, is a large file. But when most pod companies stream, they only stream at 64 kilobytes per second. That's 1/3 the quality that I record at. Whereas Podomatic streams my show at 192 kilobytes per second because that's where I upload the show to. Everywhere else, Stitcher, everywhere else, they get the feed from Podomatic. Okay? So, once again, if you ever have any issues, whatever those issues may be, go to Podomatic, check it out. Get the app, download it. Once again, it's free. You do a search for Unfound, you can subscribe to it. It's really a very easy app to use. And as Shuri is saying, you also have to factor in accents and dialects, which, yes, I've already talked about that. It very well may be that in Janice's case, she has a very beautiful, hard Southern accent from Eastern Texas. Doesn't matter to me at all, but I realize some people are going to have a hard time understanding it. That's part of it as well. Katrina says, I have an iPhone and the Podomatic app. I listened to it on my Bluetooth speaker. It was very hard to understand the mother, but I hung in there. Yeah. No. Once again, it's a lot of factors. A lot of different factors. The good news is this week is that with the episode for this Friday, the disappearance of Alissa Turney, the interview is very clear. The issue is going to be is that at least the last 2/3 of it are a little quiet. You're probably going to have to turn up your speaker a little bit, but it's clear as a bell. All right? And Sarah, who is Alissa's stepsister, half-sister, has a great speaking voice. She really doesn't, I guess you would say she doesn't have any sort of recognizable accent, which should make her easier to understand. But I will tell you, the last 2/3 of the episode of the interview, a little quieter than the first 1/3. Once again, go figure out why. I have no idea why. It was the connection. That's the way the connection went. So you run into these things, once in a while. But I have to tell you, I've been doing these interviews for 2 years, and, I actually am surprised I've gotten as good a quality out of the audio as I have. And I'm maybe an audio expert now, but when I started, I was surely not. And so that the interviews have come out and people can listen to them, and I can mess around with the levels and get people all over the world to listen to them, and people understand them. Nobody is more stunned that I've been able to do that than me. Okay? But I realize that not every time, every week, it's going to be perfect. And, the other thing with Janice is that, the times that I talked to her before they did the interview, there will be times where her phone just dropped out. We got disconnected and I had to call her back, seemingly for no reason. I don't think that happened during our interview, but that just shows you a little bit how, dicey her connection was, where she lives, like she says, out in the boonies. But, so that got to be a topic. There were a lot of people saying that they couldn't understand this. They couldn't understand this from that this past Friday. And I think a lot of it, I'm not putting the blame, it just is what it is, to use an athletic cliche. Not putting the blame anywhere. That's just the way it was. And if I thought it was so bad, I wouldn't have done the interview. If it was totally bad. I understood every word that Janice said when I interviewed her. So that's my standard. If I can understand her on the phone, then I know I can put that quality out on the computer. So there's that. I absolutely think you have point where the accents are concerned. Shannon says, I'm from Kentucky. Right, so I can say that. Lana says, I'm from New York and understand the Texans. Okay, great, Lana. Jasmine says, you are doing your best of what you have. I understand. Thank you, Jasmine, for that. Nobody worries about the audio more than I do. I guess I have to admit, though, that I will admit sometimes, how do I put this? Sometimes when people contact me privately telling me about the audio, as if I don't realize what I put out. I'll just leave it at that. Sarah, what's going on? Sarah, the creator, where is it? Where is it, Sarah? It's right here. I got you. Got it right here, Sarah. Show everybody. This is what she made. Spectacular. Look at this. Is that beautiful or what? Love it. It's right behind my computer here, Sarah. So that's what I wanted to say about the audio. You also have to understand something else when it comes to audio. I know a lot of you listen to other podcasts, and I realize that most other podcasts don't do interviews, just a person speaking into a mic. All right, and of course, getting a good audio that way is pretty easy unless you really don't know what you're doing. There is no way that for an entire episode that I would be able to have audio quality as good as that, as long as I do interviews, and I'm always going to do interviews. And I know, for example, I know the Vanished Marissa does interviews too. You know what? I've read complaints about her audio too. I'll admit that I don't listen to, as you know, I don't listen to many other podcasts, period, because I'm too busy. But I have to admit, the times I have listened to her show, most likely because she's covered a disappearance maybe that I'm looking at, I find her audio to be fine. So, but I know that she gets complaints about her audio, which I don't understand. So there's that. I mean, I've had people in the same episode, I've had somebody contact me and telling me it's too soft. And on the same episode, I've had somebody contact me and tell me it's too loud. Where are you to go for? I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to make it loud for some person, soft for somebody else. That's just not possible. So I'm doing my best. You just have to take for granted. When those episodes come out at 2 o'clock on Friday, the audio is as best as it can be. Now, I would not say maybe the first few episodes that Unfound put out 2 years ago, because I kind of didn't know what I was doing. But now it is. All right. And whatever you hear is the best I could do. And I'm not saying that I should be given, I want to know if you're having problems. But before anybody voices anything or contacts me, they should really ask themselves, is this an issue of the way I'm listening to it? Is this an issue of me not being able to understand the person because they have a certain accent I can't understand? Those things before contacting me. Now, if they've gone through that checklist and they're still having issues and they think it's a problem, then I'm happy to talk to them. Okay. Ann says, I'm not a critical person. I always assume it's me or my phone. You do a great job. When It may be you or your phone sometime, but I'm totally open to the idea that I mess up once in a while. It's just, it seems to me that some people sometimes who contact me, once again, privately, don't take into account their own equipment or their own listening abilities. You know, if you're trying to listen to it while using a jackhammer, then I don't know what I can do about that. That's just an example. I'm not saying that's actually happened, but that's an example. Okay? So audio, I think, is always going to be a topic because it's an audio show. It's an interview show. So audio is always going to be an issue. And we haven't talked about it in a while, so maybe, you know, I just needed to do this anyway. We got the shirts going on. You know all about the shirts that you can buy in the Shopify store, shopify.com. Go check it out. You know I advertise those once in a while. I was just asked about the books. Print volume 1, printed volume 2, volume 3, volume 4. And we got the cards. I got these cards sitting over here. The playing cards. Can I get them off of here? Yes. Got the playing cards. Who's this? Jennifer Wilkerson. Whoops. Claudia Wells. The first 52 cases that Unfound is covered are in the playing cards, and these are at makeplayingcards.com if you'd like to check them out. I've had some people get them because they have like card parties and things. It's a great talking point as you're playing cards. People have actually told me that. They buy them, and then the people look at them, oh, what is this? And they start talking about these disappearances. That's what it's meant for. Sarah says, that's the only time I have a problem hearing is when I'm using my jackhammer. Sarah, God bless you. I have to admit, I've never used it. I know you're joking around, Sarah, but frankly, I work for Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, never used a jackhammer. Christine says, holy crap, I finally made it. Christine, welcome tonight. Way to make it. Amber says, I totally agree with Ann. One day I forgot my regular headphones, so I listened with another pair, and it was awful. Clearly, it was the headphones, not the show. And I just started all the episodes from the beginning, currently in August 2017, and so far every episode I've been able to hear clear. That's great to hear. Thank you, Amber. Alexis, yeah. Since last week, Alexis is posting that Maddox Rich was found. Yeah, he was. And they're still looking into that to figure out what actually happened. Very sad. Very, very sad. Nicole says, the audience least of my worries, as long as I can make out most of it. The stop itself is important. Okay. Heather. Heather says, I listen every week while I cut and sand wood. Really, Heather? What are you doing? I'd love to know, Heather, what you're doing. You're cutting and sanding wood. Are you making furniture? What are you doing? I want to know. Never have an issue. I want to know, Heather, what you're making while you're cutting and sanding wood while you're listening to Unfound. That's very interesting to me. Thank you, Christine. Okay. And then, of course, finally, Patreon and PayPal. Had some multiple Patreon contributors and new supporters this week, which I'm excited about. You can be one too for as cheap as $2 a month. You get a free ebook, and you get access to the private Patreon Unfound blog where I do more commentary on that week's episode. And I write always at least 1,000 words. So I think you're getting your money's worth. So there you go. Here's what I want to talk about as far as the news. This, of course, is a disappearance, but quite a few people were talking about it in the group tonight, and then I'm going to take some questions. Rachel Cook, she disappeared while jogging in 2002 from Georgetown, Texas, which I didn't even know there was a Georgetown, Texas. Well, the reason I'm talking about it now is within the last week, there was a car that was tracked down. Now, at the time of her disappearance in 2002, there were sightings of a Trans Am of some year, 1996, 97, 98, 99, somewhere in there, a white one that was seen in the area where she was jogging at the time of her disappearance. Now, I don't know if I'm guessing the police tried to look for it or whatever else. I don't know if they've ever tracked that car down at the time. But now this past week, the police have taken into their possession. They got a tip from somewhere. But they've tracked down a 1998 white Trans Am that allegedly has blood in it. Now, keep in mind, 2002, that's 16 years ago. But they took this car into custody. They took it into their possession, I should say. Custody, I think, would be left for a person. And they tested it. And on the inside, on the passenger floorboard and on the passenger door, I'm going to guess on the inside, blood was allegedly detected. Now, that's interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The other interesting part is they're saying that this car, the reason they, of course there was a tip, but this car, according to one of the news articles, could allegedly be connected to 3 of the 4 possible suspects in the disappearance. Now, see, this is where I start to get a little confused. Because in reading about the disappearance, going back to articles from the day, and then of course going to NamUs or the Charlie Project, there weren't like multiple men seen in the area where she disappeared. There was allegedly one guy in a Trans Am who was seen in the area, and that's the reason they were looking for this car and for him. So, are we to believe that maybe there were like 3 brothers who could drive this car or something like that? That really confused me. And I know many of you here probably saw the article that I posted in the group. Maybe you've also seen, I know you do a lot of true crime reading out there, following true crime recent news. But that was a little confusing to me, how a car could be connected to 3 of the 4 suspects. I think that would have to mean that 3 of the 4 suspects are related. And obviously closely related if they could be connected all to the same car. So there's that. The other thing, though, that confuses me a little bit is that, I think that if you were to test half of the cars in the United States, you would find blood in them. And that doesn't mean they were involved in the crime. I mean, we're bleeding all the time. We're cutting our fingers, cutting our feet. People working on their cars, maybe getting up into under the dash and they nail something and then, scrape their hand or something. I would say, and having been a guy who used to work on cars quite a bit, you're bleeding in your cars. I mean, I don't mean to sound gross, but you're bleeding in your cars all the time. Now, if you're going to tell me that, there was it looked like there was a pint of blood in the passenger floorboard, that's one thing, or in the passenger, then that's different. But I also start thinking, if somebody committed this, did something to Rachel, snatched her off the street, threw her in her car, and she was bleeding or something, would you not try to clean it up if it's in your car? Now, I know sometimes things, depending on how much blood there was, it may be a little difficult. But there is a part of me that is thinking, there's just something about it that makes me feel doubtful about it. I could be totally wrong. But would people continue to cruise around in a car, and especially if they know that car was, they know what the news reports are. They know that their white Trans Am was seen in the area. Would they not try to clean it up as best they could? And if it has carpet over there, do something. Maybe they just didn't do it. Maybe they're just incompetent or whatever else. There's just something about it. I wanted to talk about it because it is still a disappearance case. It's a disappearance case. It's not a murder case. It's a disappearance case. And it's one that I don't think has been in the news for a while. So I'm sure her parents, her family are eager to, find out what's going on here. It just seemed to me that reading the article, it would just sounded a little bizarre to me. And, of course, though, if it's Rachel's blood, if they get DNA test and it's hers, no matter how much blood is in that car, obviously that's a huge thing. That's a huge, huge deal. No matter if it's a quarter size of blood or whatever, no matter what, if it's her blood and it's her DNA, then that's a big deal. And I hope it is. There's just some things maybe about the article that make me a little doubtful. I just have to say. Heather says, okay, Heather's answering my question about the wood. I make signs, T-shirts, mugs, etc. I do my sign work while listening. Okay, Heather. Cool. Love it. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for sharing. Katrina says, that's what they said about the blood found in Thomas Brown's vehicle, that it was from a cut. See, that's what I mean. There are reasons that blood can be in a car and be totally innocent. Once again, though, if this is proven to be Rachel's blood, then of course that's a big deal. But I don't necessarily start seeing red flags fly up all over the place just because blood was detected in a car. Once again, simply from my experience, my family, is in the car business for over 60 years. We work on a lot of cars. We sold a lot of cars. We've cleaned a lot of cars. We had a body shop that had to fix wrecked cars. And, so I know a little bit about that, and I know how injuries can happen, and you can get cuts and bruises and everything while working on a vehicle, no matter if it's a new vehicle or a vehicle that's 50 years old. So that's just what comes to mind in Rachel Cook's case. I did, once again, I post an article in the group if you'd like to read it, but there have been a ton of articles out there from different sources over the week about it. So maybe you want to check that out. Michelle, thanks for finding the show tonight. You're late, that's true, but you made it. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I'm going to take this question because it was a series of spectacular questions from somebody by the name of Eva or Eva. I want you to know, Eva or Eva, I don't know if you're watching right now, but I want you to know that Eva was my grandmother's name, EVA, my dad's mother. Grandma Eva, loved her. Great woman, loved her so much. She died in 1985. Grandma Eva Densel, great woman, loved her. But that's my grandma's name. So Eva, if you're going to watch this later, or maybe you're in here now, that's my grandma's name. And the weird thing is my other grandmother's name was Emma. So both of my grandmothers have an E to start their name and an A to end their name. Eva and Emma. Very weird. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. Eva asks, sometimes you and your interviewee use only the first name of a person, but then sometimes you use the full name of some people. Is the latter choice used for official suspects or maybe people with criminal charges? Or how do you decide who to name fully? That's a spectacular question. I would add some examples if it was just one episode I was listening to the other day, but unfortunately I cannot look it up at this moment. Eva, you don't have to. I know exactly what you mean. Here's how that is determined. First of all, the guests determine always, 100% determine the names we're going to use and the names we aren't. Okay? Now, you know me. I love to use all the names. I would use first and last names and middle names and everything else, but it's not up to me. So if on a certain episode we only use first names, it's because the guest only wanted to do that. If we use full names, it's because the guest wanted to do that. If we use fake names, like I know we did recently, that's what the guest decides to do. Okay? So it's very simple. When it comes to first, last names, and that's why every show is different, because every guest is different. But like I said, for me personally, I'd use all the real names with first and last names all the time. But my guests are in a little bit different situation, so I go by what they want to do. However, I will admit, sometimes I try to coax them along toward trying to use the full name. Okay, but in the end, they get to determine what they want to do. All right, but that's a great, spectacular, insightful question from Eva. Thank you. Her second question is, how do you feel about volunteering people volunteers joining searches. Do you think it's likely that they might miss evidence, say pieces of clothing or small object, but afterwards, since the area has technically been searched, it has been cleared of no evidence and therefore been looked over officially? I wish this made a bit more sense. I think what she's saying is when you get volunteers to do searches, are they going to do as good a job as maybe police cadets that sometimes are used to do searches? And is it more likely that volunteers are going to miss things? Once again, Eva's really getting deep. This is another spectacular question. You know, my feeling about searches is that they are highly overrated. I know why people do them. You know, and we talk about searches in almost every episode. But, you know, I think in only a few of the cases that Unfound is done, maybe less than 25%, have searches been done and anything noteworthy been found. Now, of course, the Thomas Brown case, several things were found. In fact, that's what makes that whole disappearance suspicious to me, because of all these other ones where searches were done and nothing was found, but in Thomas's all sorts of stuff was found. Makes me very suspicious. You know, it's like almost a little too convenient. So I realize why searchers are done, but I'm not surprised that most of the time when searches are done, nothing is found. That does not mean I think that the people who are doing them aren't doing them the right way. I just happen to believe that when searches are done, it's just a lot of guessing. They're searching in the area where the person was last seen. That makes perfect sense. But it is amazing how many times searches are done where the person was last seen and nothing is found. I mean, that happens most of the time. In fact, probably 90% of the time. Once again, my perception, I don't know what the official statistics are. So there's that part of it. Searches, no matter who is searching, are only going to be so good. Search is only good if something's there to find. As far as, you know, having like professional searchers or volunteers, I think it all depends where you're searching. And I think it depends on, you know, who is searching as far as volunteers. I mean, volunteers can be friends. Friends are going to be fairly motivated. But other volunteers are going to show up just because they're curious. And in those cases, you know, if it starts raining or gets a little too hot or anything, some of them may say, the hell with it. I'm just going to walk through here and get the hell out of here. That's human nature. I'm not going to necessarily hold it against them. Man, I got a sinus thing going on. Wow. But that may matter. It all depends on the terrain. Is it in the woods? Is it in the desert? You know, is it in the marshland? Is it in a forest? Is it in a town? It just depends. You know, there are no such things. I guess there's EquiSearch. Are they professional searchers? They're experienced searchers. But volunteers, I guess, are better than nothing. But I think when it comes to those things, I think that you can't have too many volunteers. I think that you need people who are kind of overlooking things and overseeing things to see what those people are actually doing. Because once again, I think in times like that, you may get some people to show up who are only there maybe to get some juicy info. Maybe they'll hear something and maybe they'll go to the internet and, you know, broadcast it in front of everybody. And those are the people, the exact people you don't want. So I think, Eva, once again, whenever you're going to watch this, is that probably volunteer searches aren't as good as searches done by police cadets and everything. But, you know, I think overall searches are very hit and miss. And a lot of times they don't find anything. So I don't know. I think if you were to once again do a statistical analysis of this, I think in the end, it doesn't matter. I think maybe on the fringes it does. At the very, very fringes of people being really, really serious or not serious at all, then you're going to see a big difference. But in the bell curve for most people under most searches, I don't think it matters. Once again, I have no stats to prove that. It's just my impression. And then finally, and then we're going to move on to more news. Eva asked me, once again, another great question. She must have had these saved for weeks or something. How legitimate do you think lie detectors tests are? I recently listened to an episode where your interviewee mentioned that one person that took the test had said they had taken a sedative before. In my home country, they don't use these tests, and I wondered how much of an impact they really do. There is a reason. Sherry, before I get into that, Sherry's saying, if you feel like you can help in a search, then please do volunteer your time. Yes. If you think you can help, yes. The issue is that me being the cynic that I am, I think a lot of people, once again, if they're not friends or family, sometimes in this age of Instagram and social media and Reddit and everything else, I think some people may just show up so they can get some juicy details. I have to be open to that. So there's that. Maureen says searches probably make people feel like they're doing something. Also, like you said about the use of dogs, not real effective. Yeah, people know. Yeah. Thank you, Maureen, for pointing that out. You know my feeling about dogs too. But again, then lie detectors, I guess we can just, being that was the question from Eva, I can throw that in too. It's just a tool. Lie detectors are just a tool, no different than dogs or searches or anything else. They are just a tool. I know the reason lie detectors exist. It might be able to point people in a certain direction, but the reason they're not used in court, there's a reason. And we know all of the stories of people who have been able to fool them, people who were guilty, who ended up being guilty but passed the lie detector test. And then we know there are people who are telling the truth, that they're innocent, and then the machine goes off and says that they're lying. As long as that is the case, I guess I'm going to be doubtful. Once again, it's another reason I know why searches are done. I know why dogs are used. I know why lie detectors are used. But they, to me, are not the definitive decider of anything. They're just tools. They just are. No different than a search being done doesn't find anything, and then people go back 5 years later and something is found. No different than if a dog at the beginning didn't smell anything, then another dog's brought in 5 years later and does smell something. No different if a person's given a lie detector test, a week after a disappearance, and they pass, then 5 years later, that says they're guilty. It's just, all these things are very hit and miss, and that's why they're just tools, along with everything else in this. We talk about lie detector tests because, once again, because it is a tool. It is something police do. That's why we talk about it. This isn't a law show. This isn't a court. We're not, we are not judge, jury, and executioner or anything else. This is an information show. And what, tools like lie detector tests give us information that you can choose to believe or not believe. And that's the case with anything that is ever mentioned in any episode you ever want to hear. It's up to you to choose to believe something or not believe it. Okay? I'm just going to try to give you as much information as I can. And lie detectors just are information. I think they can be fooled. I think that, I am sure that in many of the cases that Unfound is covered, where lie detectors have been talked about, that somebody has fooled one, and, the lie detector is possibly pointing in the right direction, at the right person, but I do believe they can be fooled. They're just a tool like anything else. They're no different than a hammer. Sometimes the hammer works, sometimes it doesn't. hypnosis, Cherie says. Cherie says handwriting experts. Right. They're just, it's hit and miss. Who knows? It's just a tool. Katrina says, if you can give your honest opinion, what do you honestly think happened to Maddox? Accidental or not? Katrina, I don't have enough information. That's you want what I honestly think? I think it's easy to suspect the father of something. I think it's easy to not suspect him of something. I don't know. I don't have any more information than you do. I don't know honestly what to think. So there's that. Okay. You know me, I don't mind pointing the finger at parents and things. It's not because I can't fathom the idea that a father would hurt his child. I just don't know. I just don't know. Sue says, also the way people react to having to take a lie detector test give the cops some insight into the person. Maybe. Maybe, Sue. Possible. Okay. Cirilla Doyle. She disappeared from Bentonville, Arkansas 10 years ago, 2008. Her remains were found in Mason City, Iowa this past week. This case is still up on charlieproject.org. She was a former police officer. Her husband, I think, had cancer or something, and he was in the process. It was terminal cancer. He was not far from dying. Well, she just packed up and disappeared. She got on a bus and headed for Oklahoma, everybody believed, and simply disappeared. Well, her remains were found in Mason City, Iowa, just this past week out in the woods. And this is the person, if you'll remember going back, and this happened, I think the remains were found in May. They weren't identified until this past week. Well, Mason City, Iowa is the same place where Jody Huisentrude disappeared. So when that news came out, and I know that it came out, that there were remains found in Mason City going back to May, there was news about this. Some people thinking it could possibly be Jody. Well, it wasn't. It was this woman from Arkansas. So as you would guess, Bentonville, Arkansas, and Mason City, Iowa are not very close to each other. And that just shows you how in some cases, person lives here, remains can be found a couple states away, depending on the circumstances. Now, they're not sure what happened to her, but the belief is that it's probably suicide. I think that she left. She was going to go somewhere, disappear, and so nobody would find her. Of course, then, though, her remains were found. Her name is Cirilla, C-E-R-I-L-L-A, Doyle, D-O-Y-L-E. And like I said, I think her case is still on NAMUS. They haven't taken it off yet. Still on charlieproject.org if you want to check that out. Nicole says to me, I love that you have such an open mind. Well, thank you, Nicole. You know, the funny thing is, Nicole, is that in many other parts of my life, I think people think I have a very closed mind. But, you know, I think when it comes to true crime and everything, you know, the best attitude you can have is, I don't know. I don't mean to get all philosophical and go, philosopher on everybody. But I think that the way you go about these cases is saying, I don't know. I don't know what happened. That's why you've heard me say so many times, if we knew what happened, we could just go solve it right now. But we don't know. We have suspicions. There are things that lead us in different directions. But we don't know. We think. You know, we think, therefore we are. You know, which is, who was that? Not De Gaulle. Who said that? I forget the name of the philosopher now, but I think, therefore I am. I try to have an open mind about these things because it seems to me that a lot of the reasons these cases go unsolved for so long is people have closed minds about them. They automatically, mostly police, have a certain idea about what happened, I think. Anything is possible. Descartes, there she is. Christine coming in with Descartes. Of course it's Descartes. D-E-S-C-A-R-D. That's the guy who said, I think, therefore I am. Of course he did. Katrina says, most of the Unfound that you cover, other than the few, are so far from me. I wish I lived closer to most to help others share on social media. Any other suggestions? Katrina, where are you at? As they'd say if I still lived in Western Pennsylvania. They don't say, where are you? They say, where are you at? Katrina, if you tell me where you are, where are you? I don't know. Most of the Unfound. Philosophy degree proves useful. I wish I had a philosophy degree, Christine. I think that would be spectacular if I had a philosophy degree. Most of the Unfound I cover so far, a few so far from me. Once again, Katrina, if you tell me where you are, maybe Texas Panhandle. I know I'm gonna sound like a total nincompoop on this. Texas Panhandle is over to the west. Is that where they're holding the pan? Well, we covered the 2 cases in Lubbock. Hallsville, Texas is, of course, in the eastern part. Lubbock's in the western part. We, of course, did the disappearance of Thomas Brown in the northern part. So, yeah, close to Thomas Brown. Well, Katrina, I tell you what, if you were to just work on getting publicity out about Thomas Brown alone, that'd be great. That's all you have to do. Just 1 case is plenty. That's plenty. Just don't let people forget about it. That's plenty. You don't feel like you need to do, publicize 10 cases or something like that. Just work on that 1 case. That'd be plenty. That's more than, Katrina, that's more than most people in the public are doing. Okay? No reason to set the expectations way up here. Right here is perfectly fine. Let's get to this week's case. And that is the disappearance of Alissa Turney. She disappeared from Phoenix, Arizona, a city I know very well, on May 17th, 2001. The guest for the episode is going to be her sister, Sarah, her half-sister, Sarah. You should know there is a podcast out there that is devoted to nothing but this case. So that should tell you, if you are unfamiliar with this case, this should tell you how much information there is regarding this case. Luckily, myself and her sister, Sarah, managed to cram it all into 1 interview. And this episode, I think, is over 2 hours long. But Sarah, of course, is an excellent guest. She knows her sister's disappearance very well. She's very well spoken. And just to go over the general facts of the case, which don't even scratch the surface. Alissa was a junior. She was going to be finishing her junior year in high school. She went to school. She went on a Friday. Halfway through the day, her stepfather, Michael, came and picked her up unexpectedly. They allegedly then went to lunch, and then he took her home, and then he went out to run some errands and then also pick up Sarah, who's the guest, who is Alissa's younger sister. He picked Sarah up. When they came home, Alissa was gone. And so she would have been home maybe by herself for about 4 hours, something like that. There was a note in Alissa's handwriting saying that she was thinking about and finally had decided to move to California. There was a note in her handwriting. Also, in her bedroom, everything that had been in her backpack that day had been dumped out, but the backpack itself was gone. There were no signs of any forced entry, no signs of violence, once again, except for those things being on the floor, but no pictures knocked off the walls, no broken mirrors, nothing shoved onto the floor, like something that would have been on a table that was on the floor, nothing like that. And so, and she has not been seen since. However, a week later, allegedly a call was received at the Turney home from Alissa saying that she was okay. And allegedly, Michael was the one that answered the phone. Now, there is so much in this case. what you need to also know, maybe to get into it a little deeper, is that Michael Turney was a little bit of a control freak as a stepfather. Alissa and Sarah's mother had died from cancer several years before this disappearance. But Michael taped every phone call going in and out of the house. He had cassette tapes that were running on the phones all the time. And those tapes still exist, and currently Sarah is going through all of them. Also, he had video cameras set up on the outside of their house. What Sarah found out after the fact is that there was a secret video camera set up on the inside of the house as well. Unfortunately, the phone call that allegedly came into the house a week after Alissa disappeared, the tape recorder happened to not work. In addition, the day that Alissa disappeared from the house, the cameras that Michael used religiously to keep surveillance on the house, they allegedly did not work that day, or he taped over them, or something like that as well. Of course, very, very suspicious. Okay. Hello, Heather. Thanks for joining in tonight. Shelly says, I've listened to that podcast. I just can't help but think that Michael Turney knows where she is and knows what happened. Is he still in jail for the bomb possession? Obviously, a lot of people know about this case and have listened to this. So not to give too much of it, because I want, as you know, I like to, when I do the interviews, everything is not lined up nice and orderly so you can understand it. But it is true. Sarah's asking about pipe bombs. Yes, in 2008, late 2008, the police raided, so this is 7 years after Alissa disappeared, they raided the Turney home to find that Michael Turney had been stockpiling weapons, and he had also built pipe bombs. And they believe his plan was to blow up the local electricians union because of a grudge that he had against them going back 30 years. Yes, back to the 1970s. Well, he went to jail for this after a trial, but he is now a free man as of just earlier this year, or maybe last year. He's been out of jail now, if you can believe it. After pipe bombs and stockpiling guns and everything else, he is now out of jail and is a free man again. And I've posted in the group an interview that he did while he was in jail. I'm also going to post an interview that he did with this other podcast. It may be worth your time. I listened to it, and I was reminded once again why I don't interview people who I think are going to lie to me, but you can listen to it and see what you get out of it. But we're calling this episode Manifesto for a Missing Girl, because part of the thing about Michael Turney being caught with these pipe bombs and guns, he had a 90-page manifesto. Now, what a manifesto is a collection of stories detailing why a person believes what they do, why they're doing what they do. And so I thought it would be fitting if Michael Turney's going to have a manifesto that he wrote about why he wanted to blow up this electricians union and all his theories about what happened to Alissa. And he blames her disappearance on the electricians union in Phoenix, by the way. And he names some names. Well, if he's going to do that, then we at Unfound are going to do a manifesto for Alissa Turney. And we're going to put all our information into an episode, and it's going to be a manifesto for her missing persons case. So that's what the episode is called, Manifesto for a Missing Girl. It's the disappearance of Alissa Turney, May 17th, 2001, from Phoenix, Arizona. The guest, once again, is Sarah. You could probably find her on YouTube. She's done some other interviews, and I feel very fortunate that she was able to join me. And once again, getting back to audio, first part of the interview is very loud, and I tried to even everything out, but the last 2/3 of it are a little quieter, but it's very, very clear. Sarah comes through crystal clear. Just going to have to turn it up a little bit. Okay? So there's that. Yes, Shelly, he is out of prison, Sarah. Barbara says he acted like a jealous spouse. True. Cherie says, I think the YouTube video you posted earlier is very telling. Yes, there's a video. These are VCR tapes that Sarah's currently going through. She found one where Alissa calls Michael a pervert. Well, one of the allegations, I just want to make clear, Michael Turney did not spend any time in jail for anything other than his plans to blow up that building. But there are allegations that he sexually abused Alissa. There's no proof of that. He's never been charged with that. Nothing. These are just statements. These are statements that Alissa made to other people. But as far as we know, there is no proof of that. Okay, I cannot make that more clear. These are just things Alissa said to other people. But Sarah herself, she claims, was never abused. And they have some half-brothers. They claim they were never abused. And Sarah herself never saw any abuse while she was in the home with Alissa and Michael. So I want you to take that all into account regarding this case. Don't just automatically think it's true because Alissa said so. We don't know. Okay, we don't know. All we can judge is what we know. The statements that Michael has made. The note. The backpack being missing. All these other things. That's what we're going to take into account regarding this case. Okay? So I don't want you to think that he did it just because he or he did not sexually abuse her. Okay? We're just going to have to look at what we know and make that determination. Sarah says, great name. Thank you. I work hard on these titles, people. Joyce says, that's what I need. A manifesto for 40 years. Joyce, I agree. I agree, Joyce. And yeah. So that's what we got going. And we've been going at it for 70 minutes now, 72 minutes. So I'm going to call it a night. Let's see what we did. Next week, I'm probably going to be in Orlando. And maybe I'll get my sister to come in and my nephew and his kids. Maybe I'll introduce you to all of them during the show. I think that might be cool. You guys have been really sucking up to the host this week. I appreciate all the compliments. New business manager. I'm all excited about that. I think she's going to be working hard for the program. I deeply appreciate that. Talked about the audio issues from this past week Norwood case and talked about it in relation to this Friday's case. Of course, we got the shirts, talked about the books, talked about the cards, talked about Patreon and PayPal. We talked about Rachel Cook and some new revelations, possible evidence in her disappearance from Texas in 2002. We talked about Cirilla Doyle going missing from Bentonville, Arkansas, and being found in the woods in Mason City, Iowa. And then finally, we talked about the disappearance. This Friday is the disappearance of Alissa Turney. Manifesto for a Missing Girl will be the title. She went missing from Phoenix, Arizona, May 17th, 2001. I'm going to have some other links for you before that episode plays. So that's it. I'm out of here. Thank you for watching. My favorite time of the week. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. And if you're watching the taping of this on YouTube, thank you once again for taking time out of your day to watch. You'll all be hearing me on Friday. Jimmy, you got right in at the end, Jimmy. Sorry, got to go. Michelle, you're welcome. I'm going. Thanks, everyone. Good night.